Okay, welcome to Illo Talk. I am Cory Kerr, and these are some students. Hi, students. Yay. So we are going to do the student edition here of Illo Talk. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do this probably weekly, maybe every other week. But basically, we're going to figure out how to get you guys jobs. And so not you guys specifically, but hopefully you guys specifically, but also everybody else on YouTube who is entering the marketplace. And it's kind of an interesting thing because there's no real JV league, right? There's just you leave school and then you're competing with everybody else who's been out there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so how do you do that? So that's kind of what we're gonna talk about today. So kind of a new show, so we're not exactly sure what the format will be, but I'll be putting stuff up on the screen as we kind of like draw this out so that I can do, just going to turn this black so that we can do kind of like a chalkboard situation. So today I thought we'd talk about, I don't know, do we want to introduce each other or not?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so who are you guys and what are you guys doing at the table today?
I'm Emily, and I am working on a lino cut print right now. That's why I have tools in my hands.
Cool.
And I'm Clark, and I'm just doing a drawing of just like a super soldier, and so it's just comic book stuff.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, and then we'll have Aiden and everybody else and kind of jump into the hot seat, in and out of the hot seat. I don't know why I called you out specifically. We'll see how it goes. So, so I wanted to talk today about risk a little bit, and then we'll kind of make this more of a discussion and less of me lecturing. But the reason I thought risk would be a good start is that when we're talking about you guys getting a job, it's important to understand that the companies that are hiring you are taking a risk, and companies are risk adverse. And so when you think of a company, oftentimes we think of this big giant company, but really what's happening is that there are individuals that are making a choice, and when they make a choice, they're sticking their neck out on the line, right? And so they're saying like, I think we should hire this person. And so if you don't work out as a hire, that hurts them in their job. And so most people in employment are looking out for themselves and trying to do the best that they can for their careers. And so that filters up to being really risk adverse, like companies in general. And that's why probably we'll do another episode in the future about something that Dan Stiles was talking about with doing self-plagiarization, which is basically you do stuff and then companies see you do stuff and then they want you to do that exact stuff for them. They're like, we'd like you to plagiarize yourself. And that's because they're risk adverse. And so one of the biggest things I think that students kind of miss out on is they think, I can do this stuff, so I want to have people hire me to do this stuff. When what should actually happen is, I have done this stuff. Would you like me to continue to do this stuff for you? So instead of the future promise of something, you have actual proof. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So let's take a minute here, and whoever wants to jump in, whether you're at the table or you want to switch in and out of the hot seat, let's list over here on the left. What are the risks to hiring an unproven recent graduate?
You don't know how well they stick to deadlines.
Okay, so deadlines. What else?
How many resources it'll take to teach them.
So training, okay. If I can spell that. Okay, what else?
They're just unpredictable.
Unpredictable in what ways?
Like, you don't really know what you're getting. Somebody's in the industry a while, you know that they kind of know like what's going on a little bit, but if it's somebody brand new, it's just a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, so a lot of unknowns with, like, say you've got no real track record, and you're not really sure how much of the schoolwork that they've done is influenced by the professor or by other types of things. Okay, great. What else?
You don't know if they can recreate success. Like, maybe they've done a really good project, but you don't know if they possess the skills to, like, keep doing that over and over again.
Okay, so like consistent.
Yeah,
Consistent. Is that how you spell that?
sure.
Okay.
You've never seen them actually interact with a client, so you don't know what their people skills are, what their listening skills are, if they can actually, be given an assignment and do what they're asked.
Yeah, so I'm going to say soft skills, and I'm going to put in dependability. So think of what some of the worst things that could happen inside of an industry. So you're in the middle of a project. There are people relying on, different people to do the different parts so that we can get everything done. What could go wrong in those situations?
Well, if like somebody's not doing like their part, then it could hold up an entire, entire project. And so, especially if you're the new guy, you might not be comfortable with all the processes to begin with, or maybe your artwork like needs to be refined to fit into that process.
Okay, so you mentioned kind of quality of the work, and then you were also saying like working with other people, right? So like working in groups, or what we might call like collaboration. Okay, anything else? I think this is a pretty good list.
You don't know how people, like when you first meet someone, you don't know how they handle stressful situations. Sometimes things change really quickly and you have to get something done under a little bit of pressure, or maybe a lot of pressure, and you don't know how they're going to handle that.
Yeah, so stress and pressure definitely change things a lot, right? And so we're looking at, if you're looking at somebody's portfolio, you don't know the environment that they created those things, right? It could have been that they had all the time in the world and all the resources and everything was going right in their life. And so you don't know what happens when the trade shows in 2 days, nothing's ready, that hard drive failed, and so you've got to remake all the assets. So what happens in that situation under pressure? Okay, great. Anything else that comes to mind?
Maybe just like industry knowledge, like 'cause you could hire someone and they're not familiar with like lingo and like how things work, and that could be a problem.
Yeah, okay.
They don't
So
understand what you're even talking about when you're asking them to make something.
yeah, and so we could talk about like maybe terminology,
Yeah.
and just basic industry knowledge.
In a similar vein, like legal things, perhaps some of their portfolio pieces that weren't even totally theirs or something like that, or they have, I don't know, maybe they've plagiarized work before.
Yeah,
That's what I think of when I think of worst case scenario.
yeah. So worst case scenario, you're hiring somebody and you're not even getting their work,
Right.
right? You're getting stuff that they've stolen off of the internet or something like that. In which case, that opens you up to lawsuits and legal fees and fines and everything else. Yeah, so legal I think would be good, and then I'll just add to that just like honesty.
Yeah.
I think this is a pretty good list. So we can probably come up with more as needed. But as we're looking at this, let's cut to 2. As we're looking at this list here, and let me just resize this so that we can see it on the screen. There we go. So as we look at this on the left, these are all the reasons. Now let's talk to you for just a minute. When they hire somebody, when a company hires somebody, and you've got this potential list of horrible things that could go on, what's going to have to happen after that? I mean, at some point in time, if these get bad enough, they're going to have to get rid of you, right?
Mhm.
And that actually costs a lot of money and opens them up to more risk because maybe you sue them, maybe, whatever, right? And so it can be it's a real problem to have to get rid of people. It's very expensive. And the fact that they went through a number of people that they could have hired that they might have missed out on who took different jobs or different things. And so there's a lot of risk in that. When we hire people, it takes hours and hours and hours of very expensive people's time. So you're looking at the people that are doing, HR. You're looking at the team leads. You're looking at the middle management and possibly upper management in a lot of these situations. And so, if somebody's getting paid, $150,000 a year or $90,000 a year, and you take up, 3 or 4 hours of their time and then you multiply that by however many people are doing that. It's an expensive process that they say is around 10 grand to figure out who you need on your team, right? And so that's before they start paying you benefits. That's before they start paying your salary. That's before they buy all the equipment that they need for you to sit in that station and use the software and use the whatever. And so it's a huge financial investment to onboard somebody. Okay, and so it's really important for them that they get it right. And that's why we're having this discussion, is because I want you guys to be able to eliminate this. So there's this concept of investment. And so if you're looking at a company and you're looking at investing in a company as like a venture capitalist or something, the value of that company decreases the more risk there is, right? And so if I can take my company and they do a SWOT analysis and they say one of these threats is X, and I can eliminate X, that increases the value of my company, right? And so basically the value of a company will go up when you're talking about investing if you are able to say, I've eliminated this risk and this risk and this risk and this risk, then the value goes up and up and up, and it becomes more and more of a sure bet. And so we're looking at you guys, or you should look at you as companies, as little startups, right? And so each one of you is a startup. And people that are going to hire you, whether they be clients or whether they be companies that are going to take you on as a full-time employee, they are investors. And so if you look at yourself as a startup and you look at them as investors, then the next thing you need to do is you need just to go down a list like this. And we could add another 20 or 30 things, but you go down this list, and every time you can eliminate one of these risks, it makes it more likely that they're going to hire you, because you are less of a risk, which means a better investment for the money. So let's kind of brainstorm. We can start anywhere, but what would you guys do to eliminate some of these risks? Because here's what doesn't work. We'll just eliminate this right off the bat. You can't tell people that you're honest. So right down here we've got honesty, right? If I go and I say, I just want you guys to pay attention how you feel when I do this. I am one of the most honest people that you know. Like, I don't know that you know this yet, but you should believe me. I never lie. I am super trustworthy. Like, I'm just like, people all over the place. You can ask anybody, say that I'm one of the most honest people out there, right? How do you guys feel about what I'm saying about myself right now?
It's fake.
Seem real shady.
Okay, yeah. You start to believe, like, why is he saying that? Why are we like forcing that point so much, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to have to explain how one of these things isn't a risk verbally. You want it to be kind of assumed. Now, if they ask you specifically about it and you can tell a story that alludes to the lack of risk there, that's great. But if you just walk in and you're like, listen, I know that I'm unproven and that my portfolio isn't very good, but I work hard and I'll get a lot of stuff done. I know how to do a lot of things. They're going to be like, why haven't you done them? Right? Okay, so let's just kind of jump around here. What can you guys do as students right now before you graduate to start eliminating the risks?
Well, I think for
Here, jump into the hot seat here. You can't move the chair. We set it all up. Just kidding. Go.
I think for the consistent risk, just like having a portfolio that isn't super because there's two different types of portfolios. I feel like people go really deep into one thing, or they just kind of show a bunch of different things. I think going deep and showing that you've been able to, if you want to do posters, show a bunch of successful posters you've made that really good, and show that you've been able to accomplish things a lot. That's going to show them that you're consistently making good work, and it wasn't you just had one good piece from a school project, but that you're making a lot of stuff. And so just make a lot of stuff so that you make a lot of good stuff, and use that.
I think that's great.
I was thinking along with that, showing your process, whether that's keeping your sketches,
Yeah.
or having process videos, or screen grabs of different steps along the way as you're making something, kind of proves that like I actually made this
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
And that
know?
you had like intent to make something good. It
Yeah.
wasn't like an accident.
Yeah, and show that you have the ability to think through a design and a problem, and so it's not just a fluke that you made something great, that you actually intentionally made something really good.
Yeah, and I love process a lot for that reason, because if you're looking at process, the thing that's cool about it is that you can explain the way that you think through something in a logical way without having to explain it. Like you don't have to sit here and go. First, I do, in an interview, you're like, so first I sketch, right? Because they've seen your portfolio and they can see that you explain your work. And so the fact that, and a lot of times that there is a process, that alone makes me think, okay, this person isn't random. They didn't just like every blind squirrel finds a nut occasionally, right? And so like every once in a while you can accidentally produce something that's decent. But with the consistency thing, if we're looking at this, with the consistency thing, we've got this, I can see that they have consistently produced work that's good, right? Mm-hmm. And consistently they show how they did that. And so they have a process that they're showing me, and I see all their ugly sketches that look horrible, and I notice that that they're not embarrassed by that because it's part of the process. Mm-hmm. But I see that consistently they can produce good work because they have a process.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that's great. What else? What other types of things could we do? And the portfolio and the process, I think that'll go to a number of these. Mm-hmm. Because, that can show that maybe there's less training that needs to happen depending on the thing, It also, on this one, this unknown, there's a big thing about this. Like, I don't know what you're going to be like, right? But if I watch a process video of you talking through something, I kind of get a feel for your voice. I get a feel for your thoughts. I start to get to know you a little bit, mm-hmm. right? And so that can often just say, that can take this unknown and it can kind of get rid of that kind of scary part of the unknown. Okay, what else? What else are we looking at when we're looking at this list? So we've got deadlines, training, unknown, being consistent, soft skills, dependability, quality. Interrupt me whenever.
I think, what kind of goes on with a little bit what we said, but that might cover dependability and deadlines is being a part of groups or projects and stuff like that show that you work with people and you're able to create things with people, not just focus on stuff that you're doing on your own, but show that you have that transparency to work with other people.
Okay, so let's talk about groups. How do you show that you have worked in a group?
You could have a group piece, like an ad campaign you did as a job or for a group of people, and then you could credit yourself and credit them as well and talk about the part you played.
Yeah.
And what other people did.
Okay, so credit everyone. One of the worst things that you can do, I think, in a group project is have an awesome result and then you have the person ask the question. And this happens in video a lot because video is very rarely a single person mm-hmm. doing it, right? Video is a very collaborative situation. And so you're like, here's my demo reel. And the first question that any pro is going to ask is, what part of this is you? And you don't want them to have to ask that. You want to be able to see in the credits, Nate did the camera work, and Nick did the storyboarding, and you can see what's going on. And then maybe even a little write-up or behind the scenes. There's stuff called social proof that instead of, the idea of show, don't tell, always, especially in group projects, have some behind the scenes stuff. Like the behind the scenes stuff, give me the little, the little handheld camera walking around. You can cut that in. I just watched, there's a buddy of mine who is working with some other people, and they did an animated feature film together. And at the end, during the credits, they show the one guy drawing, while there's credits rolling, and then they show the other guy, and he did 9 of the voices, and I didn't realize that he did those voices, but I saw him, and then it just was like a super cut of him doing all those different voices. And so they showed me, these are the different contributions that we had to this project. Yeah. And so that type of thing can be really good in group projects. And then you also, Clark, you also mentioned deadlines. How does talking in groups and showing group work like get rid of the risk of you meeting deadlines?
Well, I mean, typically a lot of people have like many different things that they have going on where they can't be on a project forever. And so with working with a group, typically like people will kind of create their own deadlines to be like, we need to get it finished by this time. So that way, maybe other projects are down the line.
Okay. And what's a good way to show that process?
I'm not sure. Maybe you can even explain like the process of like how your team like came to conclusions on like we got to finish it by this date. We have to film it in this season or do this by that sort of thing.
Okay.
I think talking about clients too, if you've been able to work with clients, is a good way to show deadlines, because you can say like, we were approached by this company. They needed like 3 videos and posters done within 2 months, and this is how we were able to get that done by then.
Yeah, no, we bring up clients, and deadlines is awesome. I want to kind of do a whole section on clients over here, but what's one of the main things that you're telling somebody who's about to spend money on you when you talk about clients or you show client work in your portfolio?
What are you showing by that?
Yeah,
You know how to work for people. You know how to work.
here, switch and jump in here.
You know how to work for people. You know how to work with people. You know how to take feedback. Typically, if you have client work, you know how to set up a contract. A lot of the time, you also are showing just your experience. You're not taking on somebody that's fresh out of college, absolutely never touched anything. But if you can sit down with a client, create a creative brief, create a contract, do all of those things, take revisions, make the decisions that's best for that company, stuff like that, then you're just showing that you know all that stuff.
Yeah, and all that stuff is really interesting. So you talked about experience, which is something that we should have put over in risk, right? That you have some experience, that you can work with people, that you can give and take feedback, and then you mentioned something really interesting, a creative brief. And a creative brief is really important. The main thing that I think you're showing people when you say, I've worked with clients, and then in your write-up you actually go through the different things on the creative brief, is that I'm professional enough that somebody else has already taken a risk and invested in me.
Yeah.
Somebody else has already spent money with me, right? And they liked the result, and here's what they got, and here's how they got that. And so people who are risk adverse, they'll like to look and say, oh, okay, I can see that that other people have already taken this risk and not gotten burned. And so that's really good. So there's a lot of different things that we could talk about. We'll probably do whole episodes on some of these. I think that's really good. So other things that you guys can do to kind of eliminate the risk of hiring you. We talked about soft skills, listening and understanding, taking feedback, dependability, quality, which is probably a lot of what you were showing. Quality could, I think, be portfolio and process.
How you present yourself.
Yeah, so let's talk about how you present yourself. What are the ways that companies see you?
Your portfolio, your resume.
Okay, portfolio, resume.
Social media.
Okay, so let's talk about social media. The social meds.
Yeah. Well, like most portfolios, people link to their social medias as well too. So even without looking, if you're sending out your resume, they're going to be able to see your social media right away. So they're going to see how you present yourself when you think no one's you don't probably expecting them to look through maybe.
Okay.
And so like if you're, I guess just like you want to make sure that you're like looking like someone they want to hire. Not like super professional, obviously, all the time. But like you're fun and you know how to get things done, but like you're a normal person too, I guess.
Yeah. And I've known agencies that will look at people's social media and they'll say, oh, this person will be an asset because they also like to go rock climbing.
Yeah. Like, yeah, for like companies too that like maybe have a more like specific lifestyle, like you want to work at Nike or something like that, and like showing like who you are like as an athlete or someone like as you're their target audience too is super useful as well. You can like market yourself to what the specific people they're looking for, not just like abilities wise, but like personality.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that you do that authentically.
Yeah.
Right. All these like photo shoots of you pretending
Instagrams
to
for
do
different
something.
clients.
But so those are some of the things that you can do, right? Is you're gonna show just who you are. That's gonna be part of that thing. And this is, I think, social media it's kind of a fake look at somebody because it's filtered.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, it's interesting to see how people filter. Like everybody knows that it's filtered. Everybody knows that it's not the Truman Show. We don't have cameras on us all the time, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me to look at what people choose to show.
Yeah, what they want to fake as.
Right. So like what they're okay with being broadcast out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you guys do? Do you guys think about that? Does that cross your mind of like, oh, a future employer,
When
a
I
future
post,
client?
I just never post anything because I don't want to be anything.
No, that's no good.
Yeah, when I was at college at Texas Tech, we had like a whole lecture on it. Like at one point, it was like every single thing that you post can be found. Every single thing that you post, they're probably going to read it. There have been people that haven't been hired because of certain posts that they've made. You know, like every single time that I post, I think it through. I'm like, okay, would I want an employer to see it? And if I don't, then I just don't post it.
No, you can finish it.
I'm good. You can go.
I was gonna say, like, in the same kind of thought process, I get like paralyzed because of how important I feel like that is. It's like hard to put stuff out there and be like, shoot, it's out there now, and there's kind of no going back. And I want to make sure it's like really almost so perfect that sometimes I don't end up posting anything, which I think is not good either.
Yeah, and that can be somewhat of a risk as well if I look at your social media and you're like a non-person. Like where have they been? You know,
Right.
especially if I'm hiring you to be kind of the young blood that's going to infuse my agency, my company, my art team, my whatever with some new ideas, and then you're like a blank slate online.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a huge problem. So what are the type of things that might be a huge turnoff that you should avoid posting?
Probably. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
You go.
Well, I've just heard that like with like certain kind of work that you shouldn't like post all or like a lot of unfinished stuff. Like there's like refined sketches and things like that you know will kind of be part of the process, but and it, you know I might be wrong, but like I've just heard like if it's like your doodles and things like that, like don't post too many of that. Have more finished work on social media. And that sort of
I think it depends. I think it depends. If I see nothing but unfinished stuff, then that can be really telling, because what that tells me as an employer is oh, okay, so this is somebody that likes to start things, right? But I don't see anything that's finished, right? But if I can go through your Instagram grid and I see like a sketch that turns into some inks, that turns into some inks with colors, and then you finish it, like I can see that, you know, and then I can compare that to your portfolio, and if somebody doesn't know the difference between a blog and your social media and your portfolio, then they're going to be annoying to work for. So I think the risk is if you never show the finished thing, or if the ratio is so high that it just seems like there's a bunch of starts and very few finishes. So I just push back just a little bit on that, but it really depends. It really depends.
I agree. I feel like it's a huge benefit to like show people like that it's, I don't know, a gross process at sometimes, like just to show them I'm not afraid to like try everything there is to try, even when it's just completely flops, to be able to find a concept that I can move forward with and then develop into something that executes the objectives.
Yeah.
So for social media, is it okay to use an Instagram account as, like, this is my visual diary as an artist? Today I'm sketching, today I'm painting, today I'm doing whatever, and, showing that process, and then your portfolio is more of like, this is where those finished pieces end up? Or should they both have finished stuff in them?
What do you guys think? Because I've got an answer, but I'm curious.
I don't know.
Do I have to? Can I switch?
You can lean in.
I wonder if we
if you
can
want.
make that.
I was gonna say, I think that it's important to show that process because, like, in your portfolio, you have case studies and stuff, and so I think there's a slight difference, but they should be pretty similar. Your social media is probably gonna be like, if you're using Instagram, it's gonna have captions for every single day, and you might show that stuff, like just like all your different drafts on your portfolio, but each day is not gonna have a caption, and so that's what I would think, but I could be incorrect.
Yeah. No, I think there's some valid thought to that. I also think this, right? If one of the risks is dependability. Okay, we had kind of dependability here as a risk, and so with dependability, I want to know. Let's stay on camera 2 for a minute. On dependability, I want to know, like, is this person going to show up and work every day? Do they have a habit of producing? Right? And so with dependability, a finished portfolio doesn't give me much of an indication of kind of your stick-to-itiveness, your grit, you're showing up every day to produce. But social media, if I go on Instagram or whatever, right, and I have this giant grid of all the stuff that you've done, and I see that for like 2 weeks you showed up every day to make this thing, there's like social proof of that, right? There's a timestamp on it. I can see that, and that can be really helpful as well. And then in the portfolio itself, then you can show this nice polished finished process in a write-up. You can have a big grid of images, okay, and then we click on one of these and we get to like read the story about it or watch the videos. And so I think social media and portfolios can be kind of used in conjunction with each other along those lines. But it's kind of an interesting thought. But I think you can use things with a timestamp to show dependability. Along those lines, if we're talking about dependability, what types of projects could you guys take on to show that you can stick with something that's difficult?
Big projects.
Okay, here, switch out and let's define big projects. So what do you mean?
Well, like, instead of just like designing a logo or making like a poster, do like a series of posters. Maybe if like if you can do a big client project, obviously that's awesome, but like you might not have those opportunities, but you can give yourself something. So maybe you're gonna like design like a logo for every state or something that's gonna take time, and the fun will kind of wear off. So like you really got to push through it, and that will show like you can take a big project in scope and be able to follow through with it.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned was a series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I like that you said like, when it's not fun anymore, you still do it.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people, they'll make stuff while it's fun, and then they get distracted and they'll make other stuff that's fun, or not make anything for 3 months or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're like, nope, I showed up every day for 100 days straight and I made a sticker every day, or I did one poster a week for 52 weeks in a row, like, people just know not every one of those was going to be fun, right?
Yeah.
Not every one of those was like, I had a clear schedule and nothing blew up in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's huge. I like that.
So if you're doing a project like that, let's say you're doing a sticker a day for 30 days or something like that, and half of them maybe don't turn out the best. Is it better to leave that up, like if you posted it every single day, or you take down the ones that aren't good? What?
Okay, so your question is like a sticker stint, right? I've got a thing like a hashtag sticker stint. You guys can check that out if you want online. And that's 30 stickers in 30 days. Now, just generally speaking, I don't think every one of those is going to be good, right? So what I would do personally, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but this is what I would do personally. I would show it, but I would not put every one of those in my portfolio.
Yeah.
And I would probably delete the bad ones off of Instagram. But I would probably also make a video of every single one of those stickers, and I'd probably leave the videos up on YouTube. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but for me, another thing that shows is here's a guy that understands when he's made something bad, right? And so because I've come across people, photographers, illustrators, whatever, where they're like, oh, you're really good, that's great. And then you look at their portfolio and you're like, oh, half of the stuff in your portfolio is good and the other half is bad. And I wonder, do you not know what's good or bad, you know? And because they haven't quite trained themselves to understand that, and that can be kind of problematic in a number of ways. And so I would say personally, you leave proof up that you produced every single thing, but then you curate what you focus on and what you show. And so like I've done sticker stints and, you know, maybe 5 to 10 of them weren't great. And I'll delete those, but there's still video proof of me making them and me talking about how I don't think it was great that day.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
This is a really similar question, but should your portfolio be a few exceptional pieces or a quantity of like really good, like, or pretty darn good pieces? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
How big should it be? How many pieces does an employer really actually want to see to be able to feel like you're not risk averse?
the more the better. But when we're talking portfolio, let me just resize over here. We'll make that bigger in a minute. So actually, let's just do this. Since I have the ability to make a new layer, let's talk portfolios. Okay, so portfolios. Most of what I hear is you want 10 to 12 good pieces. Okay? And what'll happen is, as you continue to produce things and as you get better, you're going to make stuff and you're going to knock some of these slots out, right? And the curation of these things is really important, because that shows your judgment and your vision and things like that. At first, unless you're some sort of prodigy or something, you might have 6. Maybe you've got 8. You want to try to get to 10, and you want those to be as good as they can get, and as few class projects as possible.
Yeah.
Now, some of your class projects are going to just be so amazing that you can really show that, I went above and beyond. But like a good art director can smell a class project from like 5 miles away. And then what are the risks with an art director hiring somebody who only shows class projects?
You only make stuff when like you're forced to. When someone's breathing down your back, you don't want to make.
So artist by assignment only. I should have done that in a different color. Artist by assignment only is a big red flag. I'm going to draw a red flag. Artist by assignment only means you are going to be a pain in the butt to work with, because I'm going to have to drag work out of you. And that if you're not feeling it, if you're not having a good day or whatever, then I'm not going to get the same amount of production out of you that I would otherwise.
Also, if it's a class project, were you just doing it for the grade? Like, what were the criteria that you had to make? Were all of the decisions that you made based off of the fact that you wanted an A, or based off the fact that it was a personal project?
Right, and so there's other things about class projects where you've got stuff like this. You've got, how much was the professor involved in that project? How much? And that could be feedback. That could be, that could be the way the project was set up. So project setup, it could be that I, as the teacher, I'm like, okay, here's this template and here's a 15-step process. And at the end of this 15-step process, it's going to look good because I set the template up and there's no way to fail if you follow the instructions.
Yeah.
That doesn't really show me anything, right? And then the other thing is, I don't know how much some random old guy is involved in your work, right? In a class project, like I could say, now let me show you this and take this out of your hands and do a third of this for you.
Yeah.
Because it's a class project, that's a possibility, and it shouldn't happen, but in a lot of 100 level classes it happens. And so that's kind of the main problem with the classwork is it shows me a little bit, but it doesn't show me you necessarily. And that's where I think the write-up can come into play, is if you did a really good class project, like tell me and show me the work that you did. And say, I was asked to do X. And don't talk about it like a class project. You know, don't say, my teacher said to blah, like say, I was, the assignment was blah, 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 blah. And I can get an assignment from a client. I can get an assignment from an employer. And so the assignment was X. And then here's what I did with that information. And you write in the first person, I did this, I made these choices. You can see the things that I did. And where where you borrow something, where you learn something from somebody else, I don't think there's any problem in saying like, hey, I saw this cool technique. I thought I'd apply it, or that type of thing. So yeah, so on portfolios, 10 to 12 good pieces, as few class projects as possible. And then I would organize it in a way that's really intuitive, but doesn't make me have to click a bunch of times. And so if you want to show that like, I'm kind of the multimedia Swiss Army knife. I can shoot a little bit, I can draw a little bit, I can design a little bit. Then give me like photography, illustration, and design, right? But don't make me click 3 or 4 times just to get to like 2 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
It's really annoying because if I can just see it all in a big grid,
Yeah.
then we can just do that.
For the 10 to 12 pieces, like would you say that those should be like case studies in series, not just like one item, right?
It depends. I don't think you have to necessarily do a case study on every single piece in your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
I would pick kind of the glory shot type stuff for the case studies, because those take a lot of time.
Yeah.
But even a little write up, if you're just doing a couple paragraphs or you're doing a little video about it, even that will be better than nothing. But also a big giant grid of stuff that you've made that most of it looks really good and all of it is good. That in and of itself shows a different thing of like, this is the amount of production that I'm able to produce, And so I think volume also speaks as well as quality. And so
a high quantity of high quality.
Right. And then just delete stuff as you get better.
As you go, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then people will want to hire you for what you show. And so if you did something really well, but you hated it, don't show that thing. Right? Because then they will be like, hey, I want to hire you to do this thing that you hate. and then your job sucks.
Yeah.
So I would only show stuff that you want to do. And the last thing that I see that along portfolios that students do poorly, that isn't a great idea, is they aspire to do or be something that they're not showing. It's like, oh, I love logos. Okay, well, why don't you have 100 logos on your Instagram?
Yeah.
Why haven't you spent, I know there's a couple people right now that are doing, I'm going to do 18 days of logos. I'm going to do a logo every day for 18 days. That's cool because that shows a couple of these things, right? We come back to this list here, and if you're showing me, I'm going to do this big project in a series. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. This big project in a series, and it's showing something in my portfolio on the social media that I like to do. And then if a company needs somebody to do that thing, they're like, hey, here's a guy who's just born to do this. We need somebody who makes logos all the time. And here's a guy who he spent like an entire month doing nothing but making logos. And they look great. And so that's kind of good there.
For portfolios, say we're going for a graphic design job at an
Okay.
agency,
Okay.
and we're trying to put together a portfolio. Should I only put things in there that might come up at a job like that? Or should I not be afraid to be like, I do printmaking in my free time. Here are some of my prints that I've made in my portfolio. Or is that just something that they're going to be like, okay, cool, but we don't care about that really?
I mean, if your site is organized well enough, they will be able to navigate it and it'll be fine. You know what I mean? So like they will be able to say, oh, interesting, she does extra stuff. And a lot of times that can be a benefit. And so I would just make sure that that's in a different section of your site, that it's well labeled. But I don't think there's a problem in showing that. I also don't think that there is a problem in building, like if you've got a Squarespace or a Wix or a WordPress or whatever, right? You can do little, I'm applying for this job, and so I'm going to make a portfolio for this job. I'm going to curate the pieces that I've done that are more applicable to what they do, and I'm going to give them that link. So it's going to be corykerr.com/this job, right? And you can go and you can say like, I've done my homework on you as a company. I know what you guys produce. I know who your clients are. I know the last 5 major campaigns that you did. And I noticed that you do a lot of hand lettering and that you're doing a lot of interesting kind of typographic work. And so I'm going to curate that stuff and then have some links to some of the other things that I do as well. That shows a couple things, because one of the things that you'll get in interviews, if you get to the interview, is they're going to ask you things. And I was talking to Goodby Silverstein a number of years ago, and they said one of the biggest things that we hate is we say, hey, what work have we done that you like? And if they say got milk, it's like, well, we've done hundreds of things since then. Hundreds of things since then. What have we done in the last year that you like? And if you're like, I just want you to give me some money so I can do a thing, and so you can kind of do some research on them and curate your portfolio as well. But no, I don't think showing the other stuff that you do, as long as it's good and it looks good, is a problem. What I would make sure of is that your site is organized well enough to where I can click on something knowing what I'm going to get, and I get that thing. And so if you've got like, here's my woodcut, here's my printmaking, here's my design work, here's my illustration, and I can click on each one of those things and I get that. I think that's fine. But I also think curating stuff for them is good as part of the application process, especially because a lot of the people that you're going to have to get by are going to be HR before you get to the people that know what they're talking about. And HR, they're just going to be like, this is what's written, and they have what's written, so good, I'm going to pass them on.
So let's say, sorry, it's backtracking,
That's fine.
but let's say that you're doing, because I'm right now starting an animation that, based on my skill level, is probably going to take at least a year.
Okay.
And so when I'm showing that in my portfolio, there's obviously a lot of stuff that I can show in that process, but I don't want it to be too long that like employers are going to stop scrolling, stop reading.
So are you
So
talking about?
how would you make it? How do you find that balance of like it's long enough that I include the process, but the employer's not going to go, oh, they talk too much about this.
So just to restate your question, you're talking about, I'm going to do a project for a year, which is awesome, right? You're going to do this animation. It's going to take you a year. And in that process, you're worried that in your blog or in your portfolio?
In my portfolio.
So
in
in your
my portfolio, I have case studies for each one. So like when you click on it,
yeah.
and it pulls up the actual project case study.
So what I would do is in your portfolio, you show the finished animation and you show the write-up, and you might even show all the behind-the-scenes stuff in one post, right? In your blog, which is different than your portfolio, that's fine. You can blog about whatever you want.
Okay.
And it's like, that'll show, that's that timestamp we were talking about. That'll show like, oh yeah, that took a year. She stuck with it. It's a ton of work, and she actually showed her work. And if you do what I do, which you don't have to, but I find this to be a good way of doing it, is as you learn things, you teach them. And so like, I learned how to do this thing. I'm going to do a video that kind of shows that thing. I'm going to do a tutorial, or I'm going to do a little Instagram carousel that teaches this principle or teaches this technique or teaches this this thing that I learned, this expression in After Effects or whatever, then not only do you have content where you are adding value to a potential audience, it also shows, oh, this is somebody who is going to lift those around them. This is somebody who's going to be excited to share things that they've learned. Because you don't want the kind of hoarder of knowledge. You want the person who's going to be a member of the team. So I think there's a lot of benefit to showing your process along the way. But I think it's really important to differentiate between your social media feeds, your blog, and your portfolio. Your portfolio is for finished work and write-ups. Your blog is for kind of a day-to-day journal. Maybe you're doing something every week or whatever. And your social media can be kind of curated based on what you want to show and what you want to present. But those are three different things. Mm-hmm. I would never put unfinished work in a portfolio. Okay. And I would never put process stuff in a portfolio unless it was part of the post of a finished work. Okay. And so this is my finished animation. And I've done this before. I've got it where it's like, here's my finished animation, and then here's me designing this character. Here's a video of me talking about how I figured out how to, hook the wiggle expression up to an inconsistent variable. Here's how I can, do all, so here's all these different things. And then they can get like, oh, if I don't want to watch 4 hours of this guy rambling on about this process, I at least get the idea that was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. So I understand why it took a year. Okay. So that's kind of that's what I would say. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that's what I was thinking too. Like, use social media to show your daily progression and stuff. And when it's done, put it on the portfolio. Right. Because if you just put it on the portfolio as a process too, they might not know when it was put there. And it could be like, this was a project you started 2 years ago, you never finished.
Right. So. And if you see something in a portfolio that's a sketch, sometimes I wonder, do they not know that that's not finished? Do they think that that's finished? Because if they turn that in to me as a finished project, I'd have a problem with it. But that as part of the process is fine. So that's kind of what I would do.
Yeah, it was more so like in the actual write-up itself, like once you click on it, just knowing how much you should include. But that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's up to you. I think there are good write-ups where it's like, here's the creative brief. Client had this objective, this audience, this message. This is how I did it, and this is why. Mm-hmm. You're less than 500 words. That's fine. And then I also find it really interesting to be like, we went through this process, and here's the day-to-day, and here's all the nitty-gritty. Mm-hmm. And the thing that you'll find is that there isn't a right answer because people have different annoyances and pet peeves and different likes and dislikes. And so you could come up against an employer who's like, I hate process stuff, just show me the finished thing or whatever, right? And you're not going to get in with that guy if you're the long-winded process girl, But then somebody else who's like, oh, I love process, and I just want to learn everybody's process, and I want to know what everybody does, and I want to know how they think, and I'm trying to gauge whether or not they're going to fit in with my team, and my process. And, a lot of print shops, local print shops, you don't have weeks to work on something. You've got hours, And so if you can show, like, I started and finished this in 2 hours, I started and finished this in 30 minutes, that is something else that you can show. Whereas somebody else is like, we're in these big group projects and we think things through and we charge $10,000 for a logo. And so we want to be able to show the client that there's a significant amount of work that went into that $10,000 logo. Whereas other people are like, we make $300 logos and you've got 30 minutes to do it so that I can turn a profit. Mm-hmm. And if you show them a year-long process, they're going to be like, okay, what can you do fast though? And so you're gonna, no matter what you do, you're gonna alienate certain people, okay, which is fine, because you don't want to be everything to everybody, because that seems fake, because it's not possible. Okay. Anything else on risk? So we haven't talked about how could you show your soft skills, the listening and all that.
Maybe just within like your interview itself, like those interview skills, like if you go into an interview and you're really not very personable, or they ask you a question and it's obvious you didn't hear that question, that's a pretty blatant sign that you're not a good people person.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah. Go ahead.
And like when you're emailing them or sending messages to them, like making sure that you're answering what the like application says or what they're looking for too.
I worked at a place who as the art director, I wasn't even allowed to see applications that didn't follow the application instructions correctly. And so she was just saying, you know, like, I don't even pass stuff on. I require a cover letter. I require a resume. I require this, and this. And if they can't follow 5 simple instructions, then I don't want them working here.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that would be good too. And as long as well, communication, when you're talking about communication that way, writing your emails in a professional way that doesn't sound like you're playing house. Like, dear sirs, blah, 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 you know, like just in a normal tone. But also, I know people that if you start the email with, hey, John's going to be like, I don't know you. Don't hey at me, you know, or whatever. And so having like proper punctuation, capitalizing things, spelling them correctly, you know, that can be a really big deal, especially in graphic design, because if I see that you can't put together a proper email when you're trying to get a job, I'm going to be like, do you spell check? Are you going to like put an ad out in like the New York Times and then there'll be a spelling error in it?
Yeah.
You know? And so that type of thing can be really important as well.
Like attention to detail.
Right.
I was thinking too, like, we were talking about industry knowledge and terminology, like in those emails, that's a good, and like on your portfolio, it's a good place where you can like just like throw in stuff and use terms that you know are like industry terms so that they understand. Not like show off, but just like show that you're conversational with the industry.
As long as it feels authentic.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if it sounds like my 10-year-old who heard a big word that she doesn't quite understand and she tries to kind of work that into conversations. For example, she constantly says, touche. And we've been trying to explain it to her over and over again. That only works when there is a counterpoint in the conversation. She's like, touche. I'm like, that time it worked, but the other time it didn't. Right? And so, if you can organically use the language of design and industry well, then I would do that. But I wouldn't try to write like a keyword-rich email that kind of like peppers that in, because that can feel very disingenuous. Because normal people don't speak like that.
Yeah,
professionals, right? So yeah. Okay, so we've gone over all that. How would you guys show? And we can wrap this up here. But how would you guys show that you can work well under stress and pressure?
Well, I was actually going to ask, what do potential employers do to kind of like gauge how you might be under stress, like for projects before hiring you?
Yeah, in design and illustration, a lot of the times there will be a design test, and the way I used to do it is I would put people in the bullpen. So I've got my art team, and I would have them work at a station with everybody else. And the way I do it is I would say, okay, you're going to go in and you're going to have 45 minutes. I don't expect you to get it done in 45 minutes, but I expect you at the end of that 45 minutes to have made some progress and be able to explain where you would have gone with it. And then I give them the objectives and the message, and I will intentionally leave out parts of what they would need to know to get it done, in the hopes that they ask me questions. And so the worst is when they're like, okay, and then they go off and they try to make something blind. And it's like, you don't know anything about my audience because I didn't say anything about my audience. You don't know anything about if we have an existing style guide for this particular brand because you didn't ask, or that type of thing. And then the other thing is they're going to be in that environment working around everybody else, and everybody else is going to be doing their job, and they will, whether that person is aware of it or not, come back and report to me, what did they do? How were they? Did they talk to you guys? Were they kind of interactive, or whatever? Were they really distracted? That type of thing. But I can see how that person works under pressure. There was a time where I had somebody who interviewed super well, wrote incredibly well. The cover letter was amazing, and felt like they could learn the software on the job. They didn't know anything about the Adobe suite, we were an Adobe shop. And so I sat him down for the design test, and about 5 minutes later, he just came back and he said, yeah, I realized I'm not qualified for this. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, I thought I could kind of figure this out kind of as I went. And as I opened it up, I realized that this is actually a fairly complicated skill set. And I was like, okay, well, thanks. So there's kind of the design test. I know other people that they say, okay, the interview process is going to take you 6 hours and we will pay you for that time. And they put them in the same thing and they give them a series of things that they want them to start and finish in those 6 hours. And then they just put them in the bullpen and you know, that is a pressurized situation because you've got an actual deadline. And so there's lots of different things. I've done it where it's not like an ad or anything, like some of the jobs that I've applied for, and they sit down and it's pressure because the art director and maybe the creative director and maybe whomever, they don't leave. And I did it one time where I was sitting at the computer and I had 2 people literally standing over my shoulder and another person sitting on the other end of the desk just
looking at you?
Just watching everything that I'm doing and then occasionally taking down notes. And that was a high pressure situation. So that's how a lot of the employers will kind of test your mettle that way. But what I want to know is, what can you guys do before that, before the interview, before you get that, to showcase that you can handle things under pressure?
I guess you just got to put yourself in like stressful situations, or like give yourself like stressful projects where you do have to learn something new, or it will take a lot of time, and or just things along those lines.
Yeah.
And then that way you kind of get used to that process or that pressure.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to these big projects that we were talking about, right?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, the big projects, like the daily stuff, and you can like write down to like today, like I only had like an hour, but I still was able to like make this, and it turned out like decent.
Right.
And just like throw in those details. It's like not like you're showing off, but just like letting them know the situations you were under and
right.
that you were under stress.
Yeah, and I think if people know what they're talking about, they will see that, oh, that's a big project, and I understand that that's a big project. And if I know that at the beginning of that thing you didn't know how to do something, and then at the end you knew how to do it and you executed it well, to me that shows, one, that you're not afraid to learn new things and that you know how to do it. And so that goes back to like kind of training. But two, that's a pressurized situation, right? If you have a deadline, if I've got to get this done in a certain amount of time, and these are the challenges that I came up against, and then this happened, and this is how I figured out a way around it. Like you can kind of show how you can deal with pressure like in that way as well. So that's stress pressure. We talked a little bit about terminology. I would just, when it makes sense, speak intelligently, but I wouldn't try to force that. And when it comes to, can you give me camera 2? When it comes to kind of this list down here, we're looking at like terminology. I would practice speaking, explaining, giving and receiving critique using the terminology of design, the language of aesthetics. And that's one reason why I really like the video format of being able to show your work while you're talking about your work, is because you have the opportunity to explain why you made certain decisions. And then you will get used to using that language of design, and you get used to it. Industry knowledge kind of comes in. And then how about legal and honesty? We're talking about like copyright and stuff like that. What are some things that you do and show that you understand how that works?
Well, if you take like inspiration from other people, like not just copying it, but take inspiration, like giving credit and be like, I saw like this artist I really admire, and so for this project, I tried my best to kind of learn that style and imitate it.
Right. So you cite your sources, right? And so you're saying that works really well as well. What if you end up doing? Let's say that you go and you license the rights to use 6 images, and then you go into Photoshop to do a big matte painting, and you take all those things and put them together into a piece. What's essential in your write-up to show that you understand the legality of that?
That you licensed them to use, and that you didn't make them.
Yeah.
Because they might think you made them and hire you to do that. And then
Right.
you're like, I just bought those.
Yeah, and so you cite your sources and you talk about the licensing, right? And you say, so these are under Creative Commons 0, so I was able to grab that. Or, I got these off of a microstock site that allowed for manipulation of the images. And so just those little, you don't have to explain like, I'm a good and honest person who understands the legality of copyright and intellectual property. But you just say, I paid for the license to do it this way, or I got these from these sources and they are available, whatever. I would avoid words like free and whatever, because a lot of people think that it's on Google Images, it's free, it's publicly available, right? And that shows a lack of knowledge. I would use the terms that are in the licensing agreement. So I would say, I made sure to get the license that allowed for manipulation, or whatever, with commercial use, that type of thing. And so you're using those terminologies, and that kind of shows that. Okay. Any closing thoughts before we wrap? I thought this was pretty good. Any other questions or comments or dead silence? We'll take those. All right. So you can we're gonna have this. You can always check out my videos at corykerr.com/videos. This will be a playlist on there. We're gonna do this often. We'll kind of figure out a schedule kind of as we go on. But in the comments, if you have any questions about if you're a student or recent graduate or somebody who is looking to move laterally into a creative industry, it's not just going to be me. We're going to bring on other people to kind of try to figure out how to get you guys jobs, whether that be clients in your freelance work or whether that be employment in-house or at an agency. And so just to recap, I think one of the most important things is that if you do the work that you want to be hired to do on your own when you're not required to, and you consistently get in a habit of doing that, I think you can eliminate most of these risks. And that's kind of my point of why I constantly push people to do kind of personal projects, is because it shows so much and it just eliminates the risk and it increases your value as a startup. So that's that. Go check my stuff out at corykerr.com, and all the links to everything else is there. Thanks for having me, or thanks for coming on. I was going to say thanks for having me on, but I think you guys are on my thing. So let's do that. All right, we're out.